Today I want to talk with you guys about safety. In particular, what are the safest shots to throw early in a fight or a sparring match if you're up against somebody new, to make sure you're minimizing the risk of getting countered easy, because some shots, some combinations are so easy to counter, whereas some are very difficult. And this is a strategy that has kept me safe through my whole career, making sure I don't get clipped in the initial part of a fight or a sparring match. So guys, stay tuned for this important episode. When we see very high level fighters who come into the ring, very often they spend the first 30 seconds, minute, even minute and a half being very careful assessing their opponent. And today we're talking about what the best way to do that is. Now, you may have noticed very often in fights, when people get clipped on counter shots, it's not when the opponent is coming and throwing a single shot and then they get the counter. It's when they go 1, 2, 3 and then they get countered. And the longer the combination goes, in my opinion, the more risk you run of that counter shot. Number one, because as we throw longer and longer and longer, it's more likely that we start making mistakes, like our jaw raises up or we blink too many times. But also because our opponent, very simply, if he's guarded up on one shot, the chance of him countering is probably fairly small. On 2 shots, it increases. If you let a 7-piece combo go, you can be sure at some point this guy's gonna go, okay, enough of that, and throw back on you. So to start off this episode, I want you guys to keep in mind that early in the fight, early in a sparring round, you are best off throwing single shots. And we see very high level fighters do this over and over. They make sure they pick the safest single shots, they let those go multiple times, and the whole second of every minute, they are calculating and taking in data. So what is the first technique we can use to make sure we are staying super safe while still assessing our opponent? Well, in my opinion, and it's something that we see Buakaw do so often, it's the lead leg push kick, the lead leg teep, front kick, whatever you want to call it. This is a very safe technique because we're throwing it at a very long range. It is very difficult for somebody to throw a counter shot back that's going to end up in a knockout. They might scoop my leg off to the side and counter low kick me, but that's not going to end the fight. Really, the worst case scenario to me is if they catch my front kick, they drag me in and they throw a hook up to the head. But it's very unlikely that that is going to happen, and as long as you are not reckless and you don't let your hands drop during the front kick, or if the front kick is caught, you are very safe. So I would suggest early in the fight, if you're just wanting to control the pace, you don't want to come out, you don't want to get too reckless, you don't want to throw fast, long combinations, you want to feel your opponent out, you come out, you're outside of jab range maybe, and you just touch them. And you touch them and you just see what they're going to do, how they respond. You start analyzing their footwork, their defense, and you're just taking in information. The next one that you should really be working very often is a single jab. When we throw our single jab, there's lots of little points that we can initiate to make sure we are as safe as possible. Number one, just general jab technique. When you come forward, don't have your shoulder low and your jaw high. That's an easy counter. We go right like that. Number two, if I'm coming in initially and I want to keep my head super safe, I get it off the center line as I jab. That's going to make sure that if the guy throws back, most likely his punch is going to miss. Number three, my other hand is going to protect my head. If I do all 3 of those, shoulder up, head off the center line, opposite hand tight to the head, there is like a 99.9% chance that you can throw that jab 10, 15 times in a row without getting a big counter back. It's one of the safest shots to throw, and it will give you a good read on whether your opponent is fairly proficient on throwing back counter shots. If you throw a jab and a jab and a jab, obviously with in and out motion, and they do nothing, you might go, this is looking good for me. If on the first or second jab they're already coming back, maybe they're trying to time it and go to a corkscrew, or they're throwing a counter left hook after they check, then you know, okay, I got to be ready for some counter shots on this guy, and I need to be extra diligent on making sure I don't make any mistakes when I start letting my combinations go. Now, one of my personal favorites is just coming in and initiating a right low kick. That's all I do. I just walk in, I keep my hands nice and high, I make sure that I'm not exposing my head as I throw the low kick, and I just chop to the thigh, and I just see again what the reaction is. Did they get the checkup? Did they make any big mistakes, like letting their hand drop as they checked? And I'm just taking in data again, trying to figure out how I'm going to move forward once the first 30 seconds of the fight are done. When we're throwing the low kick, a couple things to be very careful of is number one, as we already talked about, don't let your chin come up. You should just have your chin down. My head comes slightly off the center line, and I have two options for my hands. Number one is just keep one arm in front. Number two is swing low, but as I do that, I just need to make sure that I'm not keeping my head right up in the center. If I do everything wrong, and just keep my head there, throw my arms out, splay them out wide, keep my head right upright, yes, I'm going to run into trouble. But in my experience, so many times I have thrown the single low kick multiple times early in the fight, and I don't get countered, and I can get away with it. Obviously, this won't work over and over and over. If it does, you'll score the low kick KO, but most people start hollowing out or checking the low kick or taking the low kick and firing back. But early in the fight, it is a fantastic way, my favorite way, to feel out my opponent in a safe way. And finally, the last technique we're going to talk about today in terms of being super safe in the early stages of the fight is a skip round kick. When I come up and I let that lead round kick go. Why is this one so safe? Why do we see Buakaw throw it time and time again without getting countered? Well, if we lengthen our hip out, we sort of push our hip forward as we throw the kick and we lean our head back very slightly, that means that the kick can be fired without the counter punch. To get the counter punch off, there needs to be a block and probably a step forward from the guy reacting to the kick. But if you are sharp on this round kick, you're fast on your skip, it's not super noticeable, it's not telegraphed, you just skip off, you fire your kick out, you keep your hands in the correct position, and then from there you rechamber and you step back, it is very, very unlikely that somebody's going to have enough skill to block and throw a knockout shot that early in the fight. Keep in mind that early in the fight is a good time to get away with single shots because your opponent hasn't got a good read on you either. Later in the fight, throwing the single shots might not work so well because the opponent has become more relaxed. When somebody becomes more relaxed, they're going to be much quicker at blocking and throwing back. But early in the fight, people are just a little more stiff, a little more rigid, not willing to commit quite as quickly to hard knockout counter shots unless you just leave a massive opening for them. But single shots, super safe, super effective at reading your opponent while making sure you don't put yourself at risk. Running through the list again, we have the jab, we have the rear leg low kick, we have the lead leg front kick, and we have the lead leg body round kick. These four techniques, in my opinion, are going to be some of the safest to throw, and you don't want to run through these four techniques over and over and over as single shots for the whole first round because eventually people are going to pick up on that. But you use it for the first 15, 20, maybe 30 seconds, just feeling out your opponent, and then maybe you just stick your toe in the water a little bit and then throw a quick combo of 2 and then just go back to a couple single shots and then maybe a combo of 3. You don't have to do this with every opponent or every sparring match out there, but if you come up against somebody and you're this tall and they're this tall and you're going, they probably hit pretty hard. If we're the same weight class and they're that much shorter, they probably hit fairly hard, and I need to be extra careful to make sure I don't end up getting countered really early when I haven't really got a read on how strong and how powerful this guy is. So playing with those single shots is going to be fantastic for your confidence early in the fight and a fantastic way to get a read on your opponent. So guys, that's all from me today. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like. If you haven't already, join the channel and get subscribed. As always guys, train hard. I'll see you back here soon for another video.